today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to teach you how to train your nervous system so that your feelings become manageable. Shame is, I did something that people shouldn't do and I feel bad about who I am, as opposed to I have a behavior that isn't working for me and I need to change it. The decision that you're going to make is going to be, I am not going to explode in the presence of my family. It's not safe for them. It's not okay for them. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we are talking about feeling first, reacting later, training your nervous system for relationship. And I want you to know, guys, that ladies have been kicking our butt in this area. Their brains are wired for this. They know how to express and receive emotions so much better than we do. The truth is that half the time we don't know what we're feeling, and when we do know, we only know because jumps in and takes over. Well, in this episode, we're going to talk about how to train your nervous system so that you're better prepared to be emotionally honest in a way that she can receive, so that you're in a better position to receive what she has to say. In the last episode, we talked about the way you can do that. In this episode, we're going to talk about what needs to happen in your nervous system for that to work. So here's a listener question. Chris says, my wife says I go from 0 to 60 emotionally. I don't mean to, but I just snap. How do I stop doing that? That's a big one. There's a lot in this. If we go from anytime a human being, man or woman, goes from 0 to 60 emotionally, I'm not talking about 0 to 10 or 20. Yeah, I'm not saying, oh, wow, that makes me angry. I'm going like all of a sudden, just like that, like an electric car when you step on the pedal. Hey, you notice how I excluded brands there? See, I'm getting politically savvy finally. If we go from 0 to 60, it's because there's more emotion coming to the surface than the situation calls for. In fact, I would label it unwarranted emotion is in the room. There's the warranted emotion, which is something that's happening that I feel a little anger and maybe some other feelings about. But then there's that other stuff that goes from 0 to 60. It's unwarranted, and I would even say inappropriate. And guys are really becoming better judges of what's inappropriate and unwarranted. I'm going to give us some credit. We are getting better at this. There are more and more men who are coming to work with me and their wives who consider themselves to be empathic and emotionally connected. But here's the thing. They're still men. An empathic male still knows less about feeling than most women. It's just how it is. So what happens when we go from 0 to 60? There's two components. One is there's old emotion. And typically what's happened is something's occurred in our space that reminds us of an old hurt or an old injustice. And not only do we have the little bit of anger about that situation, but we layer on a whole bunch more that's been hanging out in the past, that's unreleased. Let's call it unreleased emotion. And what happens is there's an amygdala hijack. We've talked about in a lot of episodes. Hey, but you guys who know, the amygdala is the diva. When the diva comes out on the stage, it wants all the attention. It wants all the energy. The diva is emotional and irrational. And it can only fight, run away, or play dead. That's the only options that this diva has. And when we go from 0 to 60, the diva is in full command of the stage. All the emotional energy has come out of the director, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that decides whether you're going to be in the rest of your cortex, the cerebral cortex, or whether you're going to be in the amygdala. Basically, all the emotional energy goes to that amygdala. And not only does that happen in our brain, but when that happens, there's physical reaction. The diva comes out on the stage and there is a rush of adrenaline. There is a hit of cortisol, and that does not just leave your body. All right. It builds up. In fact, the more the diva comes out on the stage, the more the diva comes on stage. What I'm saying to you is the more that that amygdala is triggered and we don't pull the energy out from it, we don't give it the hook and pull it off stage, the more it comes out. And the reason is our prefrontal cortex, the director, gets weaker and weaker, and the amygdala, the diva, gets stronger and stronger. Oh, we've talked about this in a lot of episodes. Please forgive me if this is old stuff for you, but it's the foundation, right? What we're talking about is, how do we go from 0 to 10? Everyone says, I need to feel my feeling. This is from Marcus. He's 38. But no one tells me exactly what that means. Where do I even look? So the first step here is you want to get a hold of these feelings before they become inappropriate and unwarranted. Now, I'm going to plant a seed here, Marcus. If you're like the earlier listener and you just go to 0 to 60 and you just snap, you probably need to do some release work on this old emotion. We've talked in Rich in Relationship about mental and emotional release multiple times. It's a very simple process that helps your unconscious mind to ferret out, uproot, and let go of old hurts and old emotions. It's a form of guided self-healing. It's incredibly effective. It's been studied and validated. The mental emotional release process is intensive. It helps your unconscious mind to do the work, and your unconscious mind wants to do the work. It's not like your unconscious mind wants to go from 0 to 60. Now, 10,000 feet up, Marcus and Chris, what I want you to know is that when someone goes from 0 to 60, and that's all they got, when they just snap, usually for guys like this, there's a lot of shame somewhere in there, old shame. Shame is, I did something that people shouldn't do, and I feel bad about who I am, as opposed to I have a behavior that isn't working for me and I need to change it. And so the mental and emotional release process is huge for airing out and releasing shame and creating strategies for going to 0 to 10 or 0 to 20 when appropriate. If you have a lot of shame and you go from 0 to 60, Marcus, the reason why you triggered this response is it's going to be hard for you to just feel your feelings. Like typically when we have shame, what men have done is they've encapsulated over a lot of emotions with that shame in order to not feel them. And the only way those feelings can be felt, the reason why they go from 0 to 60, the reason why they snap and explode is eventually that encapsulation fails. And it just, because feelings have to come out. They have to be expressed. They have to be released. If they're not expressed and released, they literally stagnate and poison us psychically. Maybe you're not going from 0 to 60 all the time. Maybe it's just happening occasionally. Maybe you're more like Marcus, who people are just saying, hey, we want to know what's up with you, bro. So the key is to monitor your body. All right. Emotions don't hang out in our brain, even though our brain decides whether the diva is going to come out or how we're going to express. The brain is the filter. Our brain is a filter for the emotions. The emotions themselves hang out in our body. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a personal story. I played football in high school, and I had kind of a tragic childhood. I was very angry, but I also grew up way too quickly. So I was like a little boy pretending to be a man. And I went out on the football field and I challenged the whole freaking football team. I was going to show them all. And they beat on me. And I took it. All right. I'll give myself credit. I thought that's what men do. They took it. But what happened was eventually one day I got hit so hard, so many times that I was lying on the ground and I couldn't breathe. I was choking. Well, we went to the doctor and the doctor said, this is psychosomatic. There's nothing wrong with you. And it wasn't until years later that I realized what was happening was when I got hit again and again and again and again and again and again and again, a part of me just wanted to cry. It was just I felt so alone and isolated and like, why don't they like me? And why are they hitting me this hard? But I couldn't let myself cry in that environment because I was a man. I was a little boy being a man. The little boy wanted to cry, but he was never going to do that. I had a lockdown on my emotions. I would feel that hurt in my belly and it would come up to my throat and I would stop it. And that's why I was choking. I couldn't do that because I was not going to let that emotion come out. Emotions happen in our body. They happen mostly in our gut, our heart, our chest, our throat, our neck. Sometimes we might feel feelings in our extremities. When it's really good, we might feel it all over, but we're going to feel tension in different parts of our body. If you feel a lot of tension in your neck, you're probably holding a lot of anger, or maybe repressing a lot of anger. If your shoulders are up like this, it's usually an indication that you're holding a lot of anger. Super rational, holding anger, won't let myself express it, not okay to express it. If you have a lot of hurt or sadness, maybe you slump over, right? Our body mirrors emotion. It stores it. So the first thing would be trust your unconscious mind. Marcus, if you want to know what you're feeling, this is a really long answer, Marcus. I apologize. Take a look in the mirror and look at your face. What feeling do you see on your face? Stand in front of a full-length mirror and look at your body. Are you a little heavy? Maybe you're carrying a little defensiveness. Are you super skinny? Maybe you're not nurturing yourself. Ask yourself, am I slumping forward? Are my shoulders up? And ask yourself, what's the emotion that's driving that? Now, I'm not saying everybody who has their shoulders up is angry and everyone who's slumped over is sad. I'm just saying, if you noticed that you're having trouble standing up straight and that you don't have a joyful expression, what is the expression? And where are you a little hunched over or uneven? And what is the emotion that is driving that? There are like reams of studies that show that physical ailments start as emotion. Google it. All right, I'm not going to spend the whole podcast talking about it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out, what are we feeling? The next thing is we want to develop a vocabulary for it. And we called this emotional fluency. There's previous episodes, look them up. Emotional fluency basically means identify the feeling and put a word to it. Here's another clue for a lot of you, guys in particular, but some women also. Men generally are not comfortable with sad, hurt, lonely, and afraid. Right? I was so afraid in that story I told you about football. I was so afraid that they would think I was a wimp if I cried. There was no way I was going to cry. I'd rather have them think there was something wrong with me, that I was choking unconsciously. I didn't consciously think that. It was an unconscious decision that I made, and my unconscious mind obeyed me. Now, the problem with this is that when we have a lot of stored emotion that we're not really in touch with, we tend to react instead of responding. In the last episode, I talked about being proactive. Being proactive is having a planned response. I reacted when people hit me again and again and again. If somebody really rang my bell, I would react by choking. But if I had said, hey, you know what? I need to take a few minutes, and stepped off to the side and had a few tears, who would that have hurt? It might have even helped. Certainly would have helped me. So responding instead of reacting. We have a listener question from Victor. He's 49. He's a writer. He says, I'm great when things are calm, but in the heart of the moment, I say or do things I regret. How do I stay grounded? We talked in the last episode about breathing. Pause and breathe, really important. So if you're going from 0 to 60 and you're listening to this episode, the next time you go from 0 to 60, you might maybe be able to get a grip on yourself and say, I'm having a very intense reaction. I got to step out. If you're really over the edge, you might need some outside help. Give me a call. Step out, do some breathing, maybe step into some prayer, walk, do something physical. When you're calm, come back. You need to make a decision about how you're going to be emotionally with your partner that is as powerful unconsciously as the decision I made about I'm not going to cry in front of my team. Only it needs to be a healthy decision. The decision that you're going to make is going to be, I am not going to explode in the presence of my family. It's not safe for them. It's not okay for them. You need to decide that so powerfully right from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. And not only do you need to make that decision, but you need to have a strategy. And the strategy is going to be when I explode or when I have the feelings that lead to exploding. Once you make the decision, you'll probably explode. And then you're going to say, oh my God, I decided I wasn't going to do that. And what you need to say to your family is, oh my God, I decided I wasn't going to do this anymore. I need to step out. I'm really sorry. And then you go and reset. Or you might say, really, Roland, but I wasn't going to do this anymore. I can't believe I'm doing this. And step out. And then you need to notice when you step out, what was the steps that took you to 60? And you need to make a decision that you're going to catch it earlier. And so the next time that you get triggered, as you start to, you're going to go, I made a decision about this. I'll be back in an hour. And then you need to do the same process again. What were the steps that led to 50? Until you find the root thing. Or you could schedule a call with me and I'll help you lift that thing out. But either way, your family does not deserve this. And the only way to train your neurology, your system, your nervous system, to not go there, because you've been going there and going there and going there. You've trained it over years. Our unconscious mind has trained your neurology, this actual structure of your brain, to go there over and over. The only way to do it is first to make a decision, and second, to act on the decision. And third, to do something about the emotion that's driving it. Because the truth is, it's the core emotion. It's that old hurt that's driving it. And get that just because you understand what's driving a feeling, and maybe even release it. This happens sometimes in mental emotional release work. Sometimes we release an old hurt, but neurologically, we've been going down that road so many times that something happens. We don't have the same reaction, but we want to go down the road anyway because it's where we always go, right? Not only do you let go of the old thing, but you have to have a strategy. When you let go of the old thing and you have a strategy and you act on it and adjust it, that's when your neurology starts to change. Now, the question is, can you do this at any age? Darnell, who's 55, said, I've been this way for decades. Can a guy in his 50s actually change how he reacts emotionally? And the answer is yes. Neuroplasticity is not only real, but it's continuous. It may be your metabolism gets slower as you get older. It may take longer than maybe when you were in your 20s, but you can still do it. You are the clay that is being molded and shaped. And when you have strong relational motivation, when you love your partner and you don't want to hurt them or your children anymore, when you have a powerful motivator and you make a strong decision, that imprints even more intensely. What I want you to get is this isn't a one and done deal here. This is I'm talking about you moving from being unconscious and only working on yourself in a crisis to working on your neuroplasticity, doing that brain exercise we talked about in the last exercise, exercising your prefrontal cortex, exercising your cerebral cortex. So your amygdala is shrinking and it's getting bigger. We're talking about doing meditation, mindfulness, prayer. We're talking about having practices for a lifetime, continuing to grow them, continuing to grow your daily rituals, continuing to grow the traditions in your family. Have a tradition in your family that we don't treat each other like that here. And when we do, we take a time out. You might, when you make your decision, go to your family and say, I've made a decision and I need your help. The next time, if I ever go off like that again, remind me that we don't do that here. We take that emotion somewhere else. And I promise you, the next time you go off, and they'll say to you, hey, Dad, we don't do that here. And you will have to either honor your commitment in that moment or be a liar. And I know you're not a liar. Slow, sustainable nervous system work. It's like the first time you go to the gym, you don't want to go. You go. Afterwards, you feel okay. The second time, you feel a little better. The third time, you feel good. The fourth time, maybe you don't go. And you go, holy crap, I was starting a new habit and I didn't make it. And then you go the fifth time and the sixth time. And after a few months, it becomes a habit. And then after a few months after that, if you don't go, you feel bad. Working on your nervous system is like working on your body. Yet the goal isn't perfection. There isn't a perfect kind of behavior that we're working towards here. The goal is to develop practices that help our physical and our emotional and our spiritual condition. Regular practices so that we can create safety, trust, vulnerability, and intimacy in our marriage. All of this, the feeling, the pause, the presence, prepares you for a higher level of emotional strength. So I want you to get that this is about leadership. We're not leading the battle. It's a battle with ourselves, all right? It's about being willing to retrain yourself. It's about also being willing to heal parts of yourself. I want you to think of this as warriors. Warriors train, healers nurture. We're going to embrace our inner warrior and our inner healer. And guess what? That's the next episode, the warrior and the healer. So stay tuned to Rich in Relationship. Like us, love us, subscribe. We want to hear from you. And in the meantime, have an awesome day and an amazing tomorrow.